Good night, folks. My name is Renato de Oliveira. I am CEO and founder of e-NetSec Limited, and our goal at e-NetSec is to help small and startup companies to provide them with robust security solutions at an affordable price. We really want to help, small startup companies and medium companies to secure the networks, because we do believe security is very important and should be at everyone's fingertips, right? So while we take care of the security, we would like to maintain or keep them developing and improving the products, right? So this is our goal. So today we bring our third video of Windows 2019 server, and we're gonna show you how to configure the first DC domain controller in an Active Directory forest, right? So we're gonna start that from scratch. We already installed it. We showed you the post configuration, and today we're gonna take a look at Active Directory, right? So Microsoft separate the responsibility of the domain controller into multiple roles. So admins, administrators, or systems administrators, distribute these roles, across multiple or several, if you like, domain controllers. And in case of one of these domain controllers goes down, the other Active Direct domain controller picks up and carries on. So the services don't stop, okay? So it's quite a good way of having flexibility, redundancy, and resiliency, okay? So what does FSMO means? It means flexible single master operation, right? And it prevents conflicts in Active Directory. At the same time, give you flexibility to handle different operations within the Active Directory. They can be broadly divided into 5 roles, which you're gonna see next. These 5 roles are Schema Master, Domain Naming Master, Relative ID Master, Primary Domain Controller, PDC Emulator, and Infrastructure Master. So the Schema Master, you can have one per forest. This role manages the read copy of Active Directory schema. The Domain Naming Master, this role makes sure that you don't create second domain in the same forest with the same name as another. So this is quite important, as DNS is the base for Active Directory services and everything. The Relative ID, again, you can have one per domain. This role assigns blocks of security identifiers, SID, to different DCs. They can use for newly created objects. For example, if you create a new object, the domain controller assigns an SID to the object or security identifier. The primary domain controller, PDC Emulator, again, you can have one per domain. This role is the authoritative DC in the domain. And the last one, the Infrastructure Master, again, one per domain. This role translates globally unique identifiers, GUID, and SIDs, and distinguished names, DNs, between domains. Okay, so this is pretty much, the basic, right, the summary of what a Active Directory is divided into and how it operates. Okay, so let's go to our Windows 2019 server and take a look at the configuration. Okay, so when we install Windows Server 2019, it starts and comes up with this dashboard, right? And it's quite well nicely presented to us because it says here configure this local server, right? And quick start, and then it gives you step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So if we go, let's follow the steps. Click configure this local server, okay? And let's take a look. So we've been through this earlier, and we did set up the computer name, we did set up the work group, we turned on Windows Defender, we updated the server, we made sure that the server is in the right location, London, you know, we turn on Windows Defender, right? And that's pretty much it, okay? So going back to the dashboard, and now let's go to the second step in the configuration, right? Which is adding roles and features, okay? So because Active Directory is a role, so we need to add that role. So let's take a look. Let's skip this page. If you want to take a read these, and you know, it's always good, but we don't need to read this right now, so we can click next, right? So what we want to do is configure a single server, right? Because that's going to be our first server, and it is going to host all the 5, you know, flexible roles, okay? So it's already selected. Let's click next, okay? So we need to select the server on this screen, and then click next. We highlight the server, click next, and here we need to choose which roles we're gonna install, right? So we want to install the Active Directory domain services, right? Add features. We want to install the DNS server, which is part of, you know, Active Directory. We also, as this is gonna be our single domain controller, we also gonna require the DHCP server to feed the clients with IP addresses, which we're gonna set up later on. So let's install it from now, okay? We don't want a certificate server right now. We probably will be installing this because that's going to be part of when we install our Wi-Fi controller. So we're going to add a certificate authority, right? We don't want federation service now because we're not going to interact with 365 or anything. We don't want the lightweight directory. We don't want the right management, device health attestation. No, fax server. We don't want it. Host guardian. This is an interesting security service, and we're gonna take a look at it in the next few videos, right? Also, network-based policy and access service. This is quite important because this brings a radio service which we're gonna tie up with the installation of our Wi-Fi controller, and also the certification authority, right? So we're gonna install this at a later date. Remote access desktop, we don't need that right now. Web server, we definitely don't want to install that onto our domain controller, not right now. So deployment services, we're not going to deploy any clients right now, and we don't have any clients at the moment to update, so we don't want to install a update service right now. So let's click next, right? And here are some more features for us to take a look. We're not going to install any of these features right now, so might as well click next, right? And Active Directory Domain Services. Domain Services stores information about users' computers and other devices on the network. As we know, it helps administrators security manage, centrally everything. And also, the DNS server, which resolves services, maps services, right, to computers, to servers, and also computers to IPs, servers to IPs, and name to IPs, and so on and so forth, right? So let's click next. DNS server, click next. DHCP server, click next, and let's click install. Right? If we want to tick this box to restart automatically after it finishes, we can, So yeah, let's do it. Click install, and Windows will start installing these new features. As you can see, the installation has started, and it's copying files, right? And once all the files have been copied, and Windows reboots the server, we're gonna go through the process of configuring it, which is quite simple, right? And it's quite straightforward, to be honest with you. I remember the first, Active Directory I set up, Windows 2000. It wasn't straightforward at all. It was quite a lot of steps, quite a lot of, reading, researching, and a lot of work, to be honest with you. But this is very, very simple. I think Microsoft has improved a lot, not only the installation, but also the configuration, right? So, which is quite good. Also, another thing that it has improved is the speed at which it can install things. So everything seems to be installed. Now if we click close .int, okay, let's leave the first level at this. Okay, the problem I was having there is I didn't add the fully qualified domain controller domain name, right? So that's what we needed to do. Going back to the previous one, I need to add a new forest because there is no forest, right? And the root domain required a fully qualified domain name. Why am I giving the .int? Because it's not a domain which is going to be serving the internet, so it's an internal domain, so I want it to be called int, or I could call it LAN if I want. Okay, anything you want, right, to distinguish between the internal and the external, right? So I give it a password, click next. Create cannot be created because of cannot be found. It's fine, we can set this later on. So it is installing. That's the NetBIOS name, the short version. Click next, and that's where all the databases are going to be installed, right? For Active Directory. Active Directory relies on database to create these objects, right? And to propagate changes. And now it is finally setting up my primary domain controller as a DC. Yeah, install, and it's gonna default. That's okay. We're gonna change all of that at later date, right? Later time. So once it has finished, it will reboot, and then we're gonna be able to log to our domain controller and to our Active Directory. So you're about to be signed off, you know, it's okay, it's gonna reboot. Yeah, restarting. So as you can see, it's not difficult. It's a bit slightly different from previous versions, but you know, in the end we got there, and we're gonna have our first domain controller installed. You know, it's amazing how I used to love Windows NT 4. You know, with the way it was developed. There was a primary domain controller and the backup controller, and everything that was set up on the primary was mirrored to that backup controller. You know, it was quite a simple setup. With Active Directory, things became more flexible, more scalable, but also slightly complicated. If you have one server, it's fairly easy to set up. But if you want multiple servers with redundancy and resiliency, you know, it's a bit, you know, a lot. It's quite a lot of work, to be honest with you, to set up. But it's a challenge which I personally enjoy it. I like it, you know, and the more I deal and learn with, you know, information technology and computers and security, networking, Linux, I enjoy it. I just love it, you know. And I used to be one of the first to download, you know, if there was a new version of Windows, I wanted to be the first to download and install it. If there was a new version of Red Hat or Slackware, I wanted to be the first to download and install it. You know, I still love it. I still try and test a lot of, you know, software and equipment, you know, network, and this keeps me busy a lot because I write a lot of articles, I test a lot of things, I research a lot about penetration test and the security, you know, and that helps me to pass the time because I love being busy. I love being, you know, fiddling with computers, with servers, with technology. Only here in my lab I have, you know, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 computers and servers, plus 4 switches and 2 access points, you know, difference for testing different things, you know. And I have a lot of equipment all over the place. Yeah, I have firewalls here which I need to install and test them. And very soon I'll be also creating videos how to, implement firewalls. I like Juniper firewalls, but WatchGuard is also okay. Sonic Wall. So finally, Windows has come back, has configured things. Now we're gonna do a Control Delete and log to our domain controller. As you can see, the prompt changed and it puts the domain, the short domain before the username. And here we go. Now we are logging into the domain. It's pretty much the same thing, but the only difference is now we have ActiveDirectory, and domain controller to manage the users centrally. So it's loading. And here, as you can see, let's take a look at Active Directory users and computers. That's where we create users, groups, and computers, right? There are other tasks that we need to do, but let me, talk you through a little bit about this, okay? Here's where we manage, centrally the users, right? Groups. Normally, we create at the top level on a U, okay? Organization unit, okay? And we name it like, for example, the company name, okay? The company we're working for, all right? And underneath here, we can start organizing things. Create another OU, okay? Let's say computers, okay? We create another OU, let's say users. We create another OU called groups, right? And everything related to e-NetSec, we can place it under this hierarchical structure, okay? So let's create a user here just for, for sake of it, okay? So create a user, Renato, last name, Oli, test, and we can create this username as Renato.test. We can say we can name it the user as we want. That's the name that we're gonna use, the username we're gonna use to log to, to the domain, not to the domain control itself, but to the domain. For example, using a client, and the client is joined to the domain, right? So you're gonna use your username to log to the domain, right? Next, and then we set up a password. Here, as we talked about previously, user must if you're creating the account for a user and the user is gonna log at the desk, whatever, then yeah, ideally we can set this up, we can leave it ticked, and then the user must change. We choose a password, we give the password to the user, and the user will have to change at the next logon, right? If we want the user not to be able to change the password, we tick here, and password never expires, which means it will never ask for password changing. And if you want to disable the account, we just tick this box. Finish. And there it is. Double click on it, and then we have a lot of options here which we will configure at later date. Okay, so this is pretty much it. The next video, guys, we're gonna be configuring the DNS server. All right, so this is pretty much it for the Active Directory. It's very easy, simple, and keep practicing, have a look, research, and if you have any questions, post some questions, and we'll be happy to help you figure things out. Okay, I hope you enjoy this video. My name is Renato, and we are creating a series of videos to help disseminate the knowledge and to help people learn. And also we're gonna be involved very soon with charity in Brazil to teach some kids whom haven't been involved with the wrong side, some skills, and try to develop their career in the IT side. Okay, so these videos are gonna be used to help them as well. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed. Have a good night, and I see you next talking about DNS.